Thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate your time. Members of the community, the media, thank you for coming today to the heart of the East African community. Just 1 week ago, our city of Minneapolis was torn apart by the tragic death of a woman by one of our Minneapolis police officers. Justine Damo's death is a tragedy, and when we must do everything in our power to find the truth of what happened. It is our moral responsibility to demand justice for Justine and her family, and also to advocate for police reform. Since Justine's death, there has been an intense focus on Officer Noor, blaming his actions on his race, ethnicity, and religion. Former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann insinuated that Noor might have shot Justine for cultural reasons. I've heard others describe this tragedy as a terrorist act carried out by a Muslim against a Christian. These horrific statements are dangerous and purely divisive. They undermine our American values. They seek to divide us. And I can tell you firsthand, they hurt our East African and immigrant neighbors and friends. I do not know all the facts of this case. What I know is that our city has been once more changed forever. I have not spoken to Officer Noor, nor have I spoken to anyone who has spoken to Officer Noor. But we must find the truth of what has happened. As the laws of our country dictate, when a crime has been committed, the person responsible must be held accountable at the bar of justice. At the same time, the East African community has been told that our justice system must be blind and that people will be judged by their actions and no other factor. Race, religion, sex are not relevant to this inquiry. There are many things that need to be done in our society to deal with violence and policing, both in this city and across our country. Change must happen. I support rebuilding an independent civilian oversight board, including changing state law and city policy so the board has subpoena power for investigations and can discipline police misconduct. I also support a city budget that prioritizes community violence prevention and reform above adding sworn police personnel. I support finding innovative solutions to building positive, lasting relationships between people of color and the police department. My hope today is that the new police chief, Medaria Arradondo, will be an agent of change. In his confirmation process and hearing, I will ask forceful and direct questions about what he will do to bring about such change. My support for him will only come if he is forthright and prepared to deal with the serious policing challenges that our city faces. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the community, the time of accepting the status quo is over. The time is also at hand to respect our East African and immigrant communities and our entire Minneapolis family. Now is not the time for racial hatred, for xenophobia, for Islamophobia. Now is the time for accountability, justice, and change. I promise to you today that I will be a force for accountability and change in this city, and I will do everything in my power to demand justice and better policing moving forward. Thank you very much. And now we will open for a few questions. Yes, sir.
When you talk about some of these things that you've heard, are you talking about like comments on social media, or have you literally heard people say it to your face, or phone calls, or just kind of giving us an idea of the form of these threats and comments that are being made?
Well, I've seen the change in the city. You know, social media is driving it. The far-right media is driving it. The Islamophobes are driving it. But when you have somebody like Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, go on, I don't know, TV or radio and say that this was done because he was a Muslim, I think that's unacceptable. We are part and parcel of this city and this state. And I would like to tell Michelle Bachmann personally that I'm not going anywhere, and my family is not going anywhere, and my community is not going anywhere. So that's very dangerous, because you're seeing an action of an individual, a member of the police department, being given to the whole community. And that's, I think, is very dangerous.
I've been told that Officer Mohammed Noor has been receiving death threats. What is your reaction to that?
My reaction is that that's unacceptable. But I don't know. I haven't spoken to Officer Noor, so I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Where do you stand, Council Member, on the calls for the resignation of Betsy Hodges?
Well, I'm not going to answer that question, because, and I don't want to make this into a political issue. This is a community issue. This is a Minneapolis issue. We have a tragedy at hand, and we have a community that's frightened. And that's what I want to highlight. That's the reason why we're here in the heart of the East African community today.
Have you ever met Officer Noor?
No, I've never met Officer Noor. I've never met Officer Noor. We have a number of East African police officers and many young individuals who want to join the police force. He was a fairly new officer, and I didn't have any interactions with him. So I've never.
Swearing in or anything?
No, I was not. No.
What sort of an impact do you think these sorts of racist comments would be having on Officer Noor at a time like this?
Again, I can't answer that question. It's unfortunate that if he's receiving death threats, and it's unfortunate that he's being hanged in public, in the public court. But that's not something I can really answer. I don't know what he's feeling or what he's doing. I can't get into his mind. I don't know.
No, but do you think it's wrong?
Of course it's wrong. Of course it's wrong. Nobody should be threatened. Nobody should be threatened.
Have you heard of any other officers, Somali officers on MPD who have received threats?
I've spoken to a number of officers who are afraid. But the thing I've seen young children who are afraid. Who are afraid of what will happen when they go back to school, who are afraid of bullying. I've seen women who are afraid of walking down the street actually they haven't committed anything. This is the thing. I want to go back to the issue at hand here is we have a large American, Minnesotan, Minneapolis community, law-abiding, patriotic, that loves this country. And what we're seeing is a lot of racism, a lot of hatred. What we're seeing, and now I would actually push back on the media. What we're seeing is a lot of rhetoric in the media where this is a Somali issue, where this person is a Somali officer. No, this man is an American citizen. He's an American citizen. He's a police officer of the city of Minneapolis. His actions are not the actions of the Somali community. This is the reason why I came up to speak here. Because all we're seeing is Somali this, Somali that, Somali here, Somali this. And that's unacceptable. When other officers committed such acts, it wasn't Norwegian or German or white or Protestant or Catholic. So the reason now all of a sudden it is a Muslim problem, I think is racist and is unacceptable, and the media should also be ashamed of themselves for repeating the word Somali, repeating the word Muslim in every other sentence. And I've seen that. I've seen I'll push back on the Daily Mail's coverage. I grew up in London, and the Daily Mail is a horrible tabloid. And for them to have a headline, Somali cop killer, that is unacceptable. And that's disgusting. And we should push that. We should all, as citizens of this country, push back on that. I can't hear you, ma'am.
You mentioned you were going to be involved in the confirmation process.
Yes, of course.
From what you know of him and about him, do you believe he can make the changes you're looking for? Does the community believe that? What are your thoughts at this point?
I respect Officer Rondo. He's somebody who has a great deal of experience, somebody I've worked with very well. But what I'm looking for is change. What I'm looking for is fundamental change, because we keep seeing these things repeated again and again. And what we need to do is we need a police chief that's going to bring that change. I haven't spoken to Rondo yet, but I will have frank discussions with him, and I will put in front of him the changes that I expect.
Do you wish the mayor would look outside the department since he's been with the department for so long? Do you think he can?
That might be in our discussion, but I'm not gonna jump, before I have conversations with my colleagues. Yes, Fraser.
You've spoken to somebody who knows Officer Noor. What kind of an officer is he?
I haven't spoken to many people who know him. I've spoken to some of his family members. What I know of him was he's a graduate of Augsburg College. He studied business and economics. He was a hard-working man, and he wanted to serve the city of Minneapolis.
Do you know why he chose being a
I do not know that question. No, I don't know. I don't know
Do you
that.
think he was fit to be a police officer?
I think that, again, we have to wait till we find all the facts. I'm gonna seek truth from facts. So I don't know right now if he was or if he was not. But what I know is that, you know, he served 2 years, and we need to look into his record.
Because regardless of race or religion, there were a couple of red flags there. He had 2 complaints against him already. Do you think he should have still been serving as a police officer?
I mean, again, I need to look into his file. I need to speak to his superiors and to find out, you know, the answer to those questions. But again, I don't want to prejudge this issue. But the main thing is, you know, and I'm sending my condolences also to Justine and her family. I think this is a tragedy. She was going to get married a month from now, and I think that's horrific. But the thing that keeps being repeated is the xenophobia and the racism. And I think that's very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous.
Councilmember, do you think that the mayor and former Chief Parteau jumped the gun by passing judgment on what happened before the investigation was over?
I think, you know, they should have held off on that. I think everybody should have been given an opportunity. I mean, we're a nation of laws. And I think without having the facts in front of us, we shouldn't have jumped the gun. But the main thing is, we need police reform, because this is unacceptable. Some of the actions, you know, turning off the cameras, not having them on, were unacceptable. The way, you know, he reacted and the way they reacted, all of those things we have to look at. And we have to actually change it so this tragedy does not happen again. Since I've been on the council, this has happened every other year. You know, we had Jamal Clark.
What's your advice to us as the media? Where should we turn our attention to?
Seek the facts, look into the story, but stop repeating this issue that this is a Somali problem. This is not a Somali problem, this is not a Muslim problem, this is not an immigrant problem. This is a policing problem, and I think that's what we need to look into. That's where you need to put your attention is. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and we're going to wrap it up.
You talked about that you faced racism and criticism. On the flip side of that, have you seen any support coming out from the community, distinguishing from one officer's actions?
No, in Minneapolis, you know, we have a lot of support. We have a lot of love. I've seen that, you know, talking to my constituents. People are concerned about even my safety and the safety of my family. And, you know, we have a lot of love in the city. This is our city, you know. But we have people on social media. We have people like Michelle Bachmann talking trash, and that's the problem.
Has this been reported by the media as a Somali problem?
It has.
Where has it been reported?
The Daily Mail, and some of the other coverage. Some of the tabloids in Australia, some of the fake news peddlers on Facebook. I've seen a lot of headlines.
Which tabloid media in Australia?
I don't know, but I've seen a lot. I told you the Daily Mail story. That you can take that. You can take that.
You said tabloid in Australia.
But
We're from Australia.
I mean,
what was it?
I don't know the tabloids from Australia, but what I know is I saw on Facebook pages which are saying Somali cop killer, Somali this, Somali that. Some of them were from Australia.
To be fair, sir, we would be here, standing here today, whether this was a Somali police officer, an American police officer, any officer of any race, we would be standing here.
And I respect that. I respect that. I respect that. But you know, let me push back on you. The Somali community.
An Australian woman has died that didn't need to die, and that's the fact that we're interested in.
Yeah, and that's relevant. But what I'm interested in is she was a resident of my city, and that's a tragedy. And what we want to make sure is we get to the bottom of the story. But what we do not want to do is inflame things. We don't want to make this into a race issue. This was an action of an individual. It was a tragic action, but it was not a Somali action. And when we had other shootings, we never had the race of the officer in question. We never had his ethnicity in question. And I think that's very dangerous, and we need to push back against that. That's my whole point. I'm not pointing fingers. Last question, Faisa. Faisa, go ahead. Go ahead, Faisa.
Race has always been a common denominator in these issues.
Yep,
So
that's right.
remove race in terms of covering police brutalities or any of those sorts.
No, I mean, race has been an issue, but, you know, nobody mentioned the Norwegian background or the Swedish background or the English background or the Irish background. You know, here you have a small and growing and vulnerable community. A community that is patriotic, a community that loves this city, a community that contributes to the city. And that's not the story that's coming out. And I think that's unfortunate. And thank you very much. Thank you for your time.